Views and opinions of any of the guests of After Hours AM are not necessarily the views and opinions of After Hours AM, its hosts, its staff, or any of its affiliates.
Welcome to the After Hours program.
Are you ready?
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Now broadcasting live from the After Hours AM studio, Joel Sturgis and Eric Olsen.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this edition of After Hours AM. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis, right along with me,
Eric Olsen.
Hey, Eric, man, how the heck are you doing? Well, I guess, you know what we should do right away is we should tell everybody, before we get into all the nice stuff, who our guest in the second hour is going to be.
Well, I am very excited to announce that we will be previewing a brand new show on Destination America. It just debuted last Sunday. It's called Haunted Case Files, and we are talking with one of the co-stars, veteran paranormal investigator, media guy, co-star of Haunted Case Files. He's also been on Paranormal Survivor.
Ooh.
Joe Cetrone.
Cool. Joe's a great guy. It'll be awesome to talk with him and talk about the new show. I watched the screener just like you did. It's creepy good stuff. It's really cool.
Yeah, well, what's cool about it, the angle, I love the angle. They're talking to various paranormal investigation groups. There's 3 per episode.
Yeah.
I know Joe's on 5 of the episodes, but what they've asked each of these groups to do is pick out their very worst, most terrifying, alarming, dangerous cases.
Dangerous. We like dangerous, but you know what else is dangerous, man?
What?
It's time. It's time to have the very beautiful and talented Clarissa Cole come on and share with us. Wow, man, serial killers, man. I don't even can't even sit with a straight face because they actually terrify the hell out of me. But tonight we're going to kind of dive into different realms of serial killers. Freeform. We're going to talk about Benet Ramsey. We're going to even talk about Jeff Dahmer if we want to. We have her captive for a whole hour. Miss Clarissa Cole, we have trapped you in the dungeon of the serial killer files. How you doing tonight, Clarissa?
I'm doing well.
Cool.
How are you guys?
Well, you know, not too bad. I was over at the Criminal Code, by the way. TheCriminalCode.com, and I was kicking around, and precursor to Jeffrey Dahmer, huh? I didn't think there was anything as bad as he was. Ooh,
oh, man, Dennis Nilsen. Yeah, he was, everybody knew about Jeffrey Dahmer from that era, but he had kind of a forefather in Dennis Nilsen.
Well, isn't that just a happy family right there, it's so to speak, a forefather? Hey, you know what? I'm going to follow in that guy's tracks. I wonder if that's what Jeff said. You know, I got to ratchet this up a notch, and I'm going to involve zombies in my go-around, though.
That's true. He wanted to build actual zombies, which is taking it up a notch.
Yes.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it's just, you know what, it's just being a one-upper is all that is. And does anybody really like a one-upper? Do they?
True. I just feel like he was trying to improve upon the method.
Well, A for effort, but F for the carnage. Come on, man. You didn't have to do that. And everyone go to the Criminal Code, of course, after the show. Check out what Clarissa's got going on. A lot of good stuff, a lot of good articles. And she really dives deep into the mind of a serial killer, and probably more deeply than you even want to go, to be honest with you, because it gets a little freaky once in a while.
I actually even censor myself, but thank you. I do. There's some stuff that I purposely leave out because I'm thinking, I don't know.
Yeah,
that's a little gruesome.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
cracks me up. We know Clarissa pretty well now. We've been on the air with her a number of times. Talked to her. She's sweet. She's charming. Sweet. She seems really, pretty darn normal and all that. But she talks about this stuff so matter-of-factly.
I know. And every time we do this show, we have her on, of course, first Thursday of every month. She comes on hi guys, how you doing? Let's talk about murder. And then we get right into it. And like the one where we did the Ken and Barbie's murders last time, I made my skin crawl for a week thinking about that. Oh my Lord. But seriously, you are a practicing psychologist, and I'm not going to say where or anything like that, but you deal with this as a matter of fact of a daily life. This just isn't, for fun that you're, doing a radio show. This is what you do for a living as well. So I don't know if everybody realizes that or not, that you are in the trenches. We're not just talking to somebody who wrote a book. We're talking to someone that actually does this.
She's living life.
I'm either sitting down across from them in an institution, or I'm reading reports that some of my people have written on someone that they recently sat with. And these are guys that I'm so familiar with that it becomes so normalized to me that if I go totally outside of the box, please say, oh my gosh, I'm going to retch, and I will stop.
Wow. Now, how often do you retch and you tell them you have to stop?
No, she's saying that to us.
Oh, saying that to us? Oh, my gosh.
The option.
Clarissa, just stop right now then. Okay, well, all right, good show. See you guys next. No, just kidding, of course. Now, I've heard now, just kind of segueing away from retching and vomiting, that John Benet Ramsey case has a new wrinkle in it. What is going on in that case?
I am fascinated by this because it's been so long in coming. Like any sort of resolution, and I'm not sure that there's any real resolution coming, but I've always had my theories about it, and that's not what the police or the media went with. And I've always had a theory on it, and I can throw it out there if you want to hear it.
Yes, love to.
I think that I do think that it was someone outside of the family, and everybody thought that it was the parents, or potentially I was thinking it may have been the younger brother, but he was just too young to have done some of the things that were done. And when I really am looking at it, I think it was someone outside the family, and I do think that it was someone very nearby, and I think that it may have been somebody that was cognitively compromised in some way, that may have been mentally retarded and could not maybe get a job outside of the home, potentially. Someone maybe that worked for a family business that was never fingerprinted, that has never come to the light of authorities, but that knew the family.
Interesting. Now, just to refresh all of our listeners' case, of course, John Benet Ramsey was the pint-sized beauty queen that was murdered in, 1996, if I'm not mistaken. She was the age of 6, I do believe, at the time, Boulder, Colorado, and they thought initially her father, am I correct? If I'm trying to rattle little brain cells of the case, was the murderer, and they were after him for quite some time, and then, of course, that went cold. And they haven't had any really good leads up until, recently, really. I mean, at least flirting with some type of leads.
Yeah, they suspected both. At first, the father, because they didn't like how he was acting. They thought he was kind of cold. He was a businessman. He was not that. I mean, he was a great father, I guess, but he wasn't that involved. He traveled a lot, and then they started to suspect the mother. But most of that was due to her wanting JonBenet to be in pageants. And once, all the creepy stuff that people do with their kids being in pageants came to light, she really got crucified by the media because of what they felt, she was putting her through.
Well, I find it very creepy what people do to pageant children. That's just my own opinion.
She was 6 years old when she died.
Yeah,
My
exactly.
God.
Exactly.
I mean, you're talking about a little fetus. 6-year-old. Think about it. First grader. That's a first grader. How long had she been in pageants? She'd been in pageants for years.
Yeah, like
for years.
Since age of 2 or something, they had her up there. Hey, look at my little girl all dolled up.
So that is creepy. But it's not the same thing as murder.
No, it's not. And it just keeps on going and going. This case has legs, and of course, they've never brought a murderer to justice yet in this case. And that is the most miscarriage of justice right there.
Well, Clarissa...
go ahead.
I was just going to say, I sent on to you a screener, or at least a portion of this new series. And it's a documentary. And did you glean anything new from that?
I did. There were new details in there that I had no idea about before. My theory has not changed based on what I saw, but it could, because I only saw a piece. I only saw a piece of the new series that's coming up. So my theory could completely be turned on its head. I had no idea, for instance, that they found, I'm not going to totally ruin it for people, but that they found contents in her stomach and kind of what stemmed from that. That was fascinating to me. I mean, there are certain details in this case that it's like no matter how I look at it, don't make sense.
Is the contents in the stomach PG?
They are PG, yes. I just didn't want to ruin it for people that might be looking to watch it.
Well, no, because I haven't even seen this screener yet. And so, I would love to have a gander at that at some point. But reading more and more into the case, now you believe, in your opinion, it very well possibly could be somebody that they haven't even thought about yet. Like you said, maybe someone low-functioning. Now, low-functioning people, individuals, their special needs, do you find that they don't show remorse or guilt like a lot of people do, that they're able to just kind of, put it in the back of their head and that's it?
Well, it's really variable. I feel like, half of the guys that I've met that are low-functioning have no remorse because they just don't have the ability to put themselves in someone else's shoes. And because they're so low functioning, and then other guys are immensely remorseful to the point of being suicidal. So the only reason that I thought that it was somebody low functioning potentially was because they didn't make it out of the house with her. And it seemed really disorganized in that way. And to me, that very much reminds me of other offenders that I've seen that have the motive to kidnap someone, right? But they're so low functioning that they can't quite organize themselves to get away from the location.
Gotcha. And so, of course...
Because she was found in the basement of the house.
Yeah. And they just found her. Was the body ever tampered with? Was that anything they ever found after death? Like, it wasn't no one tried to hide it. It wasn't tried to be buried or anything like that. They just found the body. Am I correct?
Yeah, well, here's what indicates remorse, though, potentially, is that there was a blanket put over her. And that's a remorseful move.
Yeah.
I think that they probably meant to silence her, but I'm wondering if they actually meant to kill her.
Yeah. It could have just been whatever gone wrong, shut her up, and it went horribly wrong.
That was kind of my thought,
and
is that they really wanted her to. And, when you think about that there were contents in her stomach, meaning that she was fed, potentially she ate something not long before she was murdered, all of this goes toward a potential pedophile who did have caring feelings for her. Believe it or not. I know that sounds totally creepy and weird.
It kind of does. It kind of does.
It does, but it does seem to indicate somebody that wanted her to like them. Because they were trying to appease her.
Yeah, well, now, was there any signs? Obviously, she's only 6, so whoever, did this could overpower her easily, but did they find any, defensive wounds on her body or anything to suggest she tried to defend herself?
I think she was pretty scraped up, yeah.
Okay.
And there was sexual assault, so.
I just, would love to see resolution come to this case.
Yeah.
And because, this little girl so deserves it because she was just a product of, what her parents wanted her to be at the time. A beauty queen and in the pageants. And boy, it has just kept on going and going and going, this case. I really, like I said earlier, truly hope there's resolution for her sake. Some justice here because she can't speak for herself anymore. And that, wow. Eric, what do you think, man? I know you have studied the case immensely yourself.
Well, I don't know if I've studied it, certainly not with the insight that Clarissa would have. But yeah, it's really a fascinating case. It's one of those really odd cases that kind of pushes every button. You have the family oddity based on the fact that she had been in all of these pageants, and when you see the pictures of her, sure, she was a beautiful, beautiful little girl, but she's so made up, and she's so sexualized. She was just a little girl, and that part of it just freaks people out, so that's part of the fascination. Then you had the potential involvement, at least originally, early on, of the family. That just makes it way weirder still. And then you have the simple fact that it has never yet been solved in all this time. It's one of the great unsolved, and I don't mean great in a good way, I mean in a big way. Yeah. One of the great unsolved murders, of the past 50 years, I guess. So it is a fascinating situation, and it's one that it really would be nice to try to get a resolution to it. And I'm hoping that this show, which does purport to bring forth new evidence and give new perspectives, I hope it is able to at least bring us a little bit closer to a resolution of the case. I find it fascinating that Clarissa thinks there's, first of all, has a theory at all, but that she's able to kind of pinpoint it to a certain kind of person who lived in a certain kind of area. Yeah. I think that's kind of amazing. If you don't mind, Clarissa, I'd love to hear any more just sort of your thoughts that led you, what has pointed to this theory. It's not a conclusion. This theory that you have about the perpetrator.
I think that there's enough evidence to indicate that he was close enough to have watched them, and that's why I feel like it's somebody that either lived nearby or had a business nearby, because the night that she was murdered, they were coming home from a holiday party. So he couldn't rely, whoever this was, would not be able to rely on regular routines. They might have known some of the regular routines, but they would have either had to, and they may have been in the house before they came home, I don't know, and waited. But again, somebody that's low functioning, how I'm envisioning it, would not have been able to sit in an empty house for a long time. It would have been too anxiety provoking. Yeah. I just feel like it had to be that type of offender, given that there was a note left. And I know that some people seem to think that Patsy Ramsey wrote that note, because there's a handwriting expert that has linked some of the writing in this note to, the style of Patsy Ramsey. I hate to say this, and I know that certain people that work in this field are going to hate me for saying it, but I put very, very low stock in handwriting analysis.
I was going to say, how often has handwriting come into your field of expertise, and how reliable has it been, and how reliable are lie detectors, for that matter, with these individuals?
Well, exactly. Both are incredibly unreliable. Yes, we do have little quirks to our writing that some people seem to have, that only some people have, but it's so variable. It depends on the expert, what they're picking up. This is not a science. It is subjective. They call it analysis, but it is very subjective depending on the person that's analyzing it. So I never put good stock in handwriting analysis. And the other thing about the note is that it contained popular phrases from movies that were popular at the time. Which is also something that a low-functioning person would do, not Patsy Ramsey. It's something a low-functioning person would do, though. And then lie detectors, incredibly unreliable, extremely unreliable, but if you're a psychopath, you can beat a lie detector, no problem.
Well, because I just watched, a documentary about lie detectors, and it just caught my eye, and so I watched it. And it seems to me the only thing that they're really measuring in a lie detector is body response.
How guilty do you feel? It's all predicated on the notion that you, as a perpetrator, feel guilty about what you've done. So you don't even need to be a psychopath to beat it. You just don't have to feel guilty.
Well, you just have to be nonchalant, not, be all tense. I mean, that's what I got from it, because they were showing how unreliable in science lie detectors truly are with somebody that, was blatantly lying, and past the flying colors. You can
also do the opposite. Like if you don't trust yourself to be nonchalant, I've seen guys do this. They work themselves up a lot before going into the lie detector so that they're already really activated. Their body's already really activated, like, putting tacks in your shoe, that sort of a thing. Mm-hmm. It's not actually a wives' tale. It actually kind of does work.
Yeah, I've never put a stock in the old lie detector test because, I've never had one, obviously, and I'm assuming none of us have. But
I have.
Have you? I have never had one, and of course, like there again, if you know it's coming and you know what's entailed, anyone can beat it. That's what this documentary was showing. It was one of the Penn and Teller documentaries, and it was the
love
show,
Penn and Teller,
the show BS. And I was watching that, and I was thinking, wow, you know what? They're onto something here. But as far as catching criminals, now I could be wrong here, but lie detectors are not admissible in court. Am I correct?
They're not. They have clinical uses, and I'm very familiar with them for my use with sex offenders. They work very well with sex offender therapy, and we use them a lot, but they're not admissible.
How does that work with that group of people?
When a sex offender is usually when they're not incarcerated, this is my work with people that have been on probation or parole.
Sure.
So they're on parole. The average sentence for rape is less than 7 years. Okay, so these guys are getting out, and they're out everywhere. If you don't want to know, don't check the sex offender registry in your community. By the way, it will scare you. They're out. So a lot of these guys, if they're on parole or probation, they have to sit in groups with people like me, and then if they're periodically part of their parole agreement is that they will do what we ask them to do as part of therapy, and part of that agreement is that they will sit through lie detector tests so that I can be, told when they're telling me that they're not around playgrounds, for instance. They aren't hanging out with their niece and nephew, for instance.
Okay.
I will tell the polygrapher to ask about that.
Gotcha. And is it because they have a stronger response than the average person to that line of questioning?
Yes, I tell the polygrapher to ask about things that I am already suspicious of, things I think they might be lying about. And I had a great polygrapher, shout out to Stuart down in Texas. He was amazing. I would say 9 out of 10 guys didn't even make it to the test because Stuart would sit with them and say, hey dude, this is what I'm going to ask you. Yeah. And they would freak out before the straps were fully cinched.
And they're just singlet canaries.
Yes.
Well, hey, more. That's great. I'm glad there's more power to the test rather than catching cheaters on Maury Puppet Show.
Oh God, no! Honestly, it's an invaluable tool, and I will never forget that. It was invaluable because it helped me help them in group.
Sure. It gave you a compass of what need to be worked on with these people. And so that's invaluable. Again, invaluable. Very, very cool. I had no idea that was used in that way. That's cool to know. But as you work with someone like low functioning, and they are a low functioning person, do they do well? Does a lie detector work on someone low functioning?
It's pretty cagey, actually. Okay. It doesn't work very well because they get very easily confused by the questions, even straightforward questions. Gotcha. And they get very worked up or nervous when, the polygrapher says, I want a yes or no, but they don't know how to answer that because they are low functioning. They want to give an explanation. It's very activating for someone low functioning. So typically, no, it does not work very well.
Very interesting. Wow. I would imagine because, people are low functioning, like someone that's on the spectrum. I've met people on the spectrum that will admit to anything if you ask them.
It's so true.
I mean, my gosh, yes, I was a second gunman. Yes, on the grassy knoll, that was me. Yes, and how do you deal with someone like that? That is just so forthcoming. They'll admit to anything just to make you happy. It must be hard as a therapist to work with them when they're so compliant.
You really have to get to know them and form a relationship with them and make sure that the other guys in group, if they're in a group, aren't running over them. Make sure that they're not saying things that are patently false, like being the second shooter. But it is very, very hard. I mean, I'm not going to lie. It's very difficult to work with an offender that you're not sure what he's feeling guilty about. Is it something he actually did, or is he crying because he feels pressure to say something that he didn't do?
Yeah, I mean, how often you run into these people that that they just want to please you, so they'll answer to anything.
There's a few. I've had a few group members, but at the same time, some of those guys, I mean, I don't want people to fear those type of offenders, because one of those guys I'm thinking of in particular was probably one of the best group members I ever had. He was extremely conscientious because he did feel very guilty. And he called me on a Christmas Eve away from a family dinner, because I told him if he ever got in trouble, if he ever got into a situation that he shouldn't be in before he offends, he should call me. He called me on Christmas Eve.
Wow. I was just
even though he knew he was going to be arrested.
I was just about to ask you the recidivism rate of these folks. Is it real high, or is it not as high as we are told it is?
It depends on if they're in a program or not. So the guys that parole that don't have to talk to somebody like me and don't have to go through the polygraph test, the recidivism rate it's high.
Okay, for hardcore offenders.
Yeah, for guys that have had no treatment. But for guys that have had treatment and that are in a program actively and continue to go to that program, the recidivism rates are actually pretty low. And with this person that I'm thinking about, like I said, he called me on Christmas Eve from, of all places, a video arcade. Around children, I could hear the video arcade in the background, knowing that he shouldn't be around children. I believe him when he said he hadn't done anything yet, but I made him stay on the phone with me and call the cops at a payphone.
And they came and got him.
They came and got him, and I saw him right after Christmas in jail. Yeah.
Wow. Well, at least he called you.
I thought he did, honestly, I thought he did amazing because he called me. I was very proud of him. He said, I shouldn't be here. I know I shouldn't be here, but I don't have a ride. I don't know how to get out of this situation.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, at least he was earnest.
Yeah.
I'm curious, just to wrap up, because we're almost to the bottom of the hour, and of course we want to move on to some other fascinating Clarissa-type subjects.
Oh, I got one in mind for you next, Clarissa. Don't you worry.
So your assessment, which you've been a little bit delicate about, is of the JonBenet case, is this was actually, in your opinion, a sexual assault gone wrong?
I do believe so, yes. Okay. I think it was someone that knew the family or lived near the family, had dealings with the family, and it was a sexual assault meant to be a kidnapping, just meant to be a kidnapping. They couldn't restrain themselves, ended up sexually assaulting her in the house, and it went wrong.
Wow. You know what? And it has all the earmarks of that, too, if you really look at the case. With the blanket, someone that knew her, someone that had access to her. It really all fits. It really does.
Well, and someone that she wouldn't find threatening.
Exactly.
I mean, when I found out that there were contents in her stomach, meaning that she ate potentially with this person, this was somebody that the family maybe had contact with and that she didn't find threatening. And that lines up exactly with someone, again, that is low functioning and somewhat childlike themselves.
Now, do you believe that this will come to light sometime soon? I mean, in your opinion, come on, they can't hide forever. If the family figured it out and moved everyone away, it might be a problem. But I would think that someone like that would reoffend or would say something to somebody. So that's definitely a hole in my theory. I don't know. Why wouldn't the family stand up, though, and say, yeah, it was weird Uncle Bob that did it, and get some resolution? That makes no sense to me why they would not want a resolution for their daughter.
I'm thinking it was probably somebody that still lived at home that everybody sees like a child, may have been a young offender as well, and they felt like they had to protect them.
Well, on that note, guys, we got to go to break. We come back, more Miss Clarissa Cole. Don't go anywhere because we dive into serial killers next.
It's your ideas, work, and creativity that make it your yard. At Ace, we're here to help with hoses and sprinklers to nurture growth, gardening tools for the shape of good things to come, even the right fertilizer and bug killers to make the grass a little greener. You'll find it all now at Ace, your place, with everything you need for your yard, plus helpful advice, almost like we're right there. Ace,
the helpful place.
Anavar Media LCC is a dedicated team of professionals committed to helping business development scale and protect their websites, mobile applications, enterprise software solutions in the Northeast Ohio area. Locally owned since 2012, our client-centered values truly sets Anavar apart. Contact us today to learn how you can get 25% off your first project. Call them at 234-380-4852. Again, that's 234-380-4852, or visit them at www.anavar.com. Again, that's www.anavar.com.
Hi, Tom Bodette. If you can hear me, then you have an internet connection, which means you can do cool things online, like listen to streaming radio, obviously, or watch a video of a monkey washing a cat. Let your freak flag fly. Or you can book a room at a great price at Motel6.com. Isn't the internet wonderful? Everything you want right at your fingertips, and whoa, did not need to see that. I'm Tom Bodette for Motel 6, and we'll leave the light on for you.
Do you have a question for our guest tonight? Don't feel like calling the show? Not a problem. Email those questions to afterhoursam@gmail.com. Again, that's afterhoursam@gmail.com.
You gotta do what you gotta do, right?
So what you gotta do is serve fried bats?
Yep. Do you know what they call bats?
Bats.
Chicken of the cave.
No one calls them chicken of the cave. Who's they, by the way?
There's a guy I met named Paco. Sells biker speed at the pier.
So that guy calls them chicken of the cave?
Yeah.
That's not they.
And welcome back to this edition of After Hours AM, and we're talking to the beautiful and talented Miss Clarissa Cole here. And Clarissa, we talked about the John Benet Ramsey case before we left, and we kind of dived into what you do a little bit, of course, on a day job. But there's been a serial killer that everyone has been kind of talking to me about, and I don't know why. It's like the serial killer pops up, and that would be Albert Fisk.
Oh,
what?
Fish,
yes.
Sorry,
Fisk. Why was I saying Fish? Albert Fish. Now, he was known as the werewolf of Wisteria. What is up with this guy? I mean,
am I thinking of the wrong guy? Is there an Albert Fisk and an Albert Fish?
Well, this is Albert Fish I am talking about, and he was, mainly a child murderer, 1870 to January 1936 is when he lived, of course, and he is also known as the Gray Man, the werewolf of Wisteria.
Yeah, I forgot that he had all those nicknames. He was kind of a trailblazer. I hate to use that word, but
the Brooklyn Vampire.
Yeah, he was a while back. He was born in 1870.
Yeah, Moon Maniac, the Boogeyman. Those are all the names that have been attached to him. He was primarily, of course, serial killer, child rapist, and cannibal.
Yeah.
But when they put him to death, there was something very odd about this guy. I mean, I think that's why he sticks in everyone's minds, no pun intended, because of what he stuck inside of himself to be such a different person. But can you give us the Clarissa workup on Albert Fish?
Yes, I can, and it's really sad that I can do this off the top of my head.
Well,
can I just say that right off the bat?
Right off the bat.
Yes. Albert Fish was, I don't know much about his young life, unfortunately, but I do know that when he became an older man, he was very kindly. People liked him. They took to him. He put ads in a paper looking for labor, farm labor. Mm-hmm. And back at the time, back near the Depression, this was a big deal. Families were hurting anyway. The thought that some of their children could get work on farms was a tremendous boon. And he would come to their houses. He would meet with the families, meet the parents, meet all the kids. Then he would select a child that he liked, take that child, and the child would never be seen again. But Albert Fish had some very weird tendencies. He was a peakerist, but I don't know that I would call it a peakerist, because I don't know that he did this to other people. So a peakerist, you're going to ask what a peakerist is, yes?
Yes.
Okay, now there have been other fascinating cases of peakerists, like recently, like in the New York subway.
Okay.
Peakerism is when someone likes to take something like, say, a hat pin. Now, hat pins are long and sharp.
Sure.
And, jab someone with it.
Oh my gosh! Just walk up to someone, grab their hat pin, and stab them.
Yeah, randomly in the subway, in airports. This has happened to people. Like, let's say you're just walking along, going to get your stop.
Yeah.
And then you feel this really sharp pain for no good reason. It could be a peakerist.
Oh my gosh! So there are actually people out there that will randomly grab long or sharp objects and stab others with them, pins and stuff like that. Wow, I did not know that. That's nuts.
Well, and the worst part about it is that they get kind of a sexual thrill from doing it.
Oh, my Lord.
Well, of course they do.
Well, why not?
Why else would they do it?
Well, sure.
I suppose it's just so strange.
Is it really? Oh God, I don't even want to think about it.
That's just weird.
Is it really a kind of a substitute form of
penetration,
intercourse?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, penetration.
Yes, it is. That's what they.
That's just weird.
Back in the day, have said. Yeah.
That's just craziness. Okay, so
apparently Albert Fish engaged in this with his victims, but so this is the part that I don't understand, and I might need help with, that Albert Fish apparently did this to himself.
Yeah, I've heard that rumor. Okay, what gratification do you gain by doing it to yourself?
That is a brilliant question.
I
don't know.
I could had a needle right over there. Watch this. And you stab yourself and you go, oh, yeah, that felt great. Give me a cigarette. That's just craziness.
Well, there's all kinds of self-harm. There's all kinds of different forms of it for different reasons.
Yeah, I saw on TV one time, of course, the TV, this whole group of people, not to veer too far from the Albert Fish, but like to cut off their own extremities. As a self-modification, they call it.
Oh, wow.
So they show this guy with a table saw. There goes an arm. It's just ridiculous. So, that's obviously extreme compared to being a what is it called? Peakerist?
A peakerist. Well, the thing that I don't get is that usually peakerism, getting the sexual gratification from it, is by doing it to other people. When you're doing it to yourself, when you're inserting, and I guess Albert Fish had an X-ray that revealed a number of needles into his groin.
Yes,
and pelvic region. They did the X-ray after his death or something, but doing it to yourself, it's no longer what I would consider, as a psychologist, peakerism. I would consider that a fetish.
Auto-peakerism? Maybe auto.
A different type of fetish.
Yeah, well, now when they went to go zap him in Old Sparky, did that cause any trouble? Him having all that metal?
Oh God! Oh, and they wouldn't know about it. I wouldn't doubt it.
I could just imagine the arcing going on.
Oh my gosh!
I got lots of metal in me. They're gonna fire me up.
For those who don't know, Clarissa, could you just give the really quick, elevator version of who he was, besides beyond the peakerism, what he did, what his crimes were, and just the real short
The nickel
version of who he is and what he did and why we care.
The Reader's Digest condensed version.
Yeah, yes.
Yes. Well, I'm not, like I said, I'm not sure about his, younger life, but I know that he had enough money anyway to be able to travel around during the Great Depression and put ads in newspapers about jobs, about farm jobs for younger children or adolescent children. And he would go, these people that would answer the ads saying, I have a child that is willing to work. He would go visit their houses, take the children, and these children were never seen again. But the thing about him is that he was a pedophile. He did sexually abuse them. And then he murdered them, and supposedly, and we're not sure about this, but supposedly he also cooked and ate their bodies.
Oh, so, yeah, unfortunately, I'm on Wikipedia right now. I'm kind of wishing I never would have went to this page of Albert Fish. Yes, he does claim that he cooked several of his victims, and he ate them, and he particularly took enjoyment in eating them. And now, did he do any tooth modification? Did he sharpen his tooth?
Not back in his day.
Okay, because that's another rumor out there about him. I want to put that at rest, that he sharpened his teeth. I'm not sure.
Oh, I did not know that.
One that
can
came
definitely
up that
look it up.
popped up.
Just to let you know, there was a guy within the last 5 years that went to malls, convenience stores, and gas stations, and he stabbed people with a 6-inch knife in the nether regions.
Oh my gosh!
And that would also be considered piquerism.
Well,
so it still happens.
Yeah, evidently it still does. So Albert Fish, of course, he would go during the Great Depression, find these children to allegedly come work for him, and the family would go, hey, yeah, you could give us some money. Go ahead, take the kid. We don't care. And the kid would never come home. Did these families ever go, hey, whatever happened to Billy? I mean, did they ever go looking for him?
I think that the families obviously were devastated. They went to authorities trying to get some closure on it, but there wasn't a lot the authorities can do. The thing that really brings Albert Fish to the fore is that he wrote letters to the families, taunting them, telling them exactly what he did with their children.
Wow.
Which is how people, figured out what was going on in the first place.
Well, yeah, he is, you call, you get a hold and you taunt him a little bit, that's a little, How do you think you're not going to get caught? Hey, by the way, I got your kid and he was delicious. Here's the note to prove he was, I even sang that, but how did he had to deep down inside, because they all say that they want to get caught. Is that true? Do serial killers truly want to get caught?
I haven't seen any evidence of that. I know what people are saying, like when they're taunting the cops, that, it's because they want to get caught. A psychopath usually feels better than everybody else around them. They think they're smarter, faster, better, stronger. I think they're taunting the cops because they truly don't think they will ever get caught. And Jack the Ripper never did. And there's lots of guys that never did. So
yeah.
I don't think they want to get caught personally, no.
So that old adage of they truly just want to get caught is out the window. So he didn't want to get caught. He was having fun tormenting the victims' families is what it was.
Yes.
Just a little, kind of.
How did he think he could get away with it? With that kind of evidence?
I think he was doing a pretty good job, actually. I mean, he did it for a number of years, and we don't really know exactly how many victims that he had. I think it's just that he, started to be more, brutal with some of his letters.
Yeah. Well, they had a letter delivered in an envelope that had a small, almost microscopic hexagonal emblem with the letters NYPCBA. Representing New York Private whatever association as a janitor at the company is how he got caught. By the way,
so he messed up.
He did mess up. He never used company letterhead, folks. If you're going to taunt your victims, don't use the company stationery. They'll get you every time.
Mm-hmm. I mean, he was like really free to talk. After he did get caught, he did kind of spill his guts. So that's why we know.
Yeah, he just started singing like crazy. Hey, by the way, make for a great book. He probably said, hey, you know what? While we're at it, there's a new thing called movies. I think I'd make a great movie. All right, moving along, just to one more that people have been buzzing about is the Night Stalker. Who is the Night Stalker, and what's going on here? I mean, I'm trying to rack my brain. Wasn't that Richard Ramirez?
It was, and unfortunately, I can maybe talk a little bit about his history, but
if you can't touch that one, just say, "Hey guys, I'd feel more comfortable not touching that one."
I would feel more comfortable.
All right,
not
let's
touching
not
that one.
then.
He was in California.
Okay.
So
let's talk. Let's move along to the other greatest hits that I've been getting. Ted Bundy.
Ted Bundy, yes, he is the penultimate psychopath. So interesting, he just is.
Yeah, well, wasn't he an attorney? Or at least aspiring?
The reason that he became a lawyer in the first place was to get back at somebody that jilted him. Talk about conviction.
Wow. So he became a lawyer just because one person said, you can't do that.
He became a lawyer because this girl thought she was too good for him, broke up with him, and then she decided to go to law school. And he's like, oh, really?
Wow.
You think lawyers are so fabulous? He went to law school, became a lawyer. She gets back together with him.
And he kills her.
He dates her. And then proposes to her, and as soon as she says yes, he walks away and never looks back.
Oh my gosh. All that just to have basically a tit for tat? Wow.
Yes.
Man, so the guy must be a genius. Borderline genius.
I would agree.
I mean, he can go in there and become a lawyer. You know what I'm going to do this morning? What's that, Ted? I'm going to become a lawyer. I mean, who says that just because someone jilted him? I'll show you. I'll be the greatest lawyer ever, and then I'll kill lots of people.
A lawyer just to propose.
Yeah,
he's one of the biggest names ever for those who may not wallow in the swamp of serial killers. Why don't you give us again, the paragraph background on good old Ted?
Well, Ted was active primarily in, I think, the 60s and 70s. He was born in the 40s. On the East Coast, and he was a serial killer that was very, some would describe him as being handsome. He was very charming and obviously intelligent and well-spoken, and he was one of the first that we know of that was very good at luring victims to him. So he would put a cast on his arm, let's say. It was a fake cast. His arm wasn't broken. But he'd put a cast on his arm and then tell a woman at a street fair or something that he was looking for his dog, that he lost his dog, and she would feel so bad for him that she would get into his car to try to help him find this dog.
And things went south from there, I'm sure.
Yes. So as far as we know, he never really needed to strong-arm his victims. He was very good at being sort of that social chameleon, and he also escaped from jail at least once.
Wow.
In Florida, and then went on a killing spree right after that. But there was nothing about Ted Bundy that indicated that he was going to become this, because he was so intelligent. He was brought up by very caring parents. What he kept saying was his trigger was that the person that he knew as his sister was actually his mother.
Oh. Well, that's definitely a strange turn of events.
Yeah, it's a little weird. I guess she got pregnant very young, and after she had Ted, she told her parents, can you raise him like your own? And they said yes. And so Ted Bundy always knew his, this older person to be his sister, and then eventually he found out that she was actually his mother.
Wow, very, very, very interesting. That would make anybody go a little crazy, I guess.
It would make you go a little nuts. I don't think most people would start serial killing women, but
I wouldn't start serial killing just, for the heck of it, because I found that out. I guess I'd be crushed for the first, day or so, but, most of us come to grips with it and move on with our lives. Not old Ted.
Exactly.
I'm going to murder people. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take it out on every female I can find.
Yeah, and that's exactly what he did. He confessed to at least 30, but we don't know the the true number. My guess is that's probably higher.
Well, I remember seeing old footage of him, and he was just so smug and cocky in the courtroom.
Smug is a great word. That's exactly right.
Just like, you got nothing on me. You think you got stuff on me? You ain't got nothing on me. And that's really how he came across. And people, even the media, were just really taken with him, how competent and how good-looking he was. It was almost like they were in denial that someone like that they almost looked up to could be this horrible.
Well, and the weird part, too, is that since he was kind of the first, like, psychopath that modern times has really acknowledged, he helped the FBI, he helped local law enforcement catch other people. I think Gary Ridgway, he helped people catch Gary Ridgway, if I'm not mistaken.
Hold on now. He was like Hannibal Lecter.
He was the Hannibal Lecter figure.
Yeah, he
in
would.
the real
exactly
world.
right.
Really? So they would go to old Ted and they'd say, "Hey, Ted, we got a murderer doing this. What's your thoughts?"
Yeah, I think Ted Bundy was the one that actually told investigators, and for whatever reason, they were not aware of this at the time. He said that when you found these girls out in the open, in the environment, and he said he's coming back to visit them. And this was something that investigators hadn't anticipated at the time, because when they found a body, obviously you want that person to be buried, you want them to be taken care of respectfully. And so they would take the body immediately, and Ted Bundy said, "Leave her there, he'll come back." And he did.
I'm surprised they didn't keep him around longer alive, Ted, just to have him as a source of investigation.
I'm sure he angled for that.
Hey,
no doubt.
Don't kill me, because I'm really good at catching these guys, and you need me. Because I know how they think, and you don't. And if you did, you'd already have them.
It's very true.
Yeah.
What did he get in exchange for that? Or was he just so arrogant that his ego getting stroked was enough?
That's a good question. I'm almost certain he probably got something in exchange for it, even if it was just more yard time, more phone calls.
Yeah. We will bring you a Snickers bar if you tell us.
Hey, that is big in prison.
Is it really?
Perfect.
Really? I have no idea about prison currency. So the old joke that you'd be worth a Snickers bar and a carton of smokes, that's a lot of money in prison, isn't it?
Oh my God, a carton of smokes these days? You have no idea.
Wow. Jeez. So,
they can't smoke anymore. So, like it used to be allowed, tobacco used to be allowed in the prison system out here.
Yeah.
It's no longer allowed in California. So just a regular can of, tobacco that, hasn't been rolled into cigarettes yet goes for over $100.
Wow. Man, I got to start doing business with these guys. Think about that. You can go get a pound of tobacco for $20, and you can make that into hundreds of dollars. Oh my gosh. Man, we're going to talk, Clarissa. We're going to talk.
Oh, no. There have been so many people that have fallen prey to that, where they're like, "Wait, you'll give me $250 for this?
You give me $250 for a Snickers bar?"
That happens to me all the time at the liquor store.
Yeah, same here. Hey, man, will you go in? No. Why not?
Do is hang out in front of it for a little bit.
Well, that's all you got to do. It sounds like Eric did that. It sounds like
what do you mean did that? I do it every day. That's my income.
No, it sounds like that when
I have a regular clientele. They're all under 5 feet.
When you were a young guy, Eric, did you ever hang out from the liquor store and wait for someone to buy for you? Come on.
The only thing I can really remember, and everything I just said was false, by the way, in case
I was going to say.
In case you don't know me yet. I do remember hanging out with my cousin and his friends, and we went down into the town. We lived a few miles apart, but we were both up the hill, and we went way down the hill. I guess I can say it was San Pedro, California.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And went down to near the harbor. It's right where the LA harbor is. And there was a notorious liquor store there that sold anything to anyone.
Wow. So if you could walk, you could buy.
I mean,
and walking's optional.
if you were in a stroller and could just get your hand out,
a walker comes in with a kid.
They knew you either wanted beer or cigarettes in that stroller. So anyway, yeah, like 14, we would just stroll on in, and there were, I think there was some variability depending on who was working at any given time.
Sure
so sometimes people would hang out front and have someone go in for them. But if other people were working there, you could just walk in. I remember we were 14 years old. We went in and bought beer.
We bought a Mad Dog.
Oh, my God.
Bought a Mad Dog 2020.
And I did not look older than 14 when I was 14. I looked 14.
And they just rang it up for you. They didn't even. Wow.
Have a nice day, gents.
Yeah, we had.
We will.
We had a store like that growing up here in northern Minnesota. It was called the East End Market. And the lady there had glasses, I would say 2 inches thick if they were anything. And if you walked in, you could get anything. They sold beer, cigarettes, adult mag, whatever you wanted you can get in this place. And she was so old and decrepit and she couldn't see. We used the same ID between us for like 3 years. You just hand her that ID. She couldn't tell the difference. Oh, okay, you look old enough. Okay, there you go. And I felt bad sometimes because there we were, this 80-plus-year-old woman, basically putting her at risk of getting arrested. But then the beer and stuff was a much better option for me. I didn't care about her welfare, but be completely honest. But,
her understanding of the law was if she looks in the direction of the ID. That's good enough.
Oh, yeah. She'd ask, do you want paper or do you want plastic? That whole thing. And then we'd say, nah, we'll just take it to go. Don't even worry about a bag. Just give it to us.
Whenever I think about that sort of a retail, like all the time, think of all the times they've been in the mini mart and the Simpsons. Just any time when I'm thinking about a mini mart, type setting. Did you guys ever watch Night Gallery? It was
yes.
The second.
Yes.
Remember that? It was the second one. It was after The Twilight Zone.
Wow, yes, I do remember that.
It was the comeback for Rod Serling, and it was in color, so it was even cooler.
Yeah, it was.
So I was old enough to see that first run. I wasn't old enough to see Twilight Zone originally, because that was... I was little, but I was old enough to watch Night Gallery. So I always remember this one. There was a really short one, and I think it was John Carradine, in fact, who was the star. And so he is interviewing. He's clearly in a job interview situation. He is the interviewer, and he is speaking to young women, right? So you see a few of them go through. Then this one comes in. And he clearly is warming to her, and his eyes are shining, and he's smiling much more, and his voice, that low John Carradine voice, is much more gentle and sweet. So finally, at the end, they say, so will you be hiring her to when will she start? He said, no thanks, I'll eat her here.
Wow!
So it's just so absurd, and it's such a twist, and it always sticks in my mind. So anytime I see a mini mart situation, I hear, something about concluding the transaction, I always think, nope, I'll eat her here.
That actually made me snort, laugh.
Yeah.
Snort, laugh, love it.
Yeah, but it's just one of those things. We all grew up with that market in our town. That if there was contraband that could be gotten, we would somehow get it. And and that's you working in the prison is basically working at the big mini mart, right? I mean, so it's like a bunch of teenagers. You're just trying to keep them from killing themselves in a lot of ways.
Oh, yeah. It's and you don't know which. We start to know which staff to be able to trust and who not to trust. But I mean, the majority of it is usually coming in. They always want to tell you it's coming in through visitors.
Oh, yeah, of course. Here comes the pile and the cake. Yeah, that was a visitor brought that one. Don't know where about it.
Yeah, but it's, I mean, the access that some of these people have, and when people get desperate for money, especially with the housing market crash in 2008.
Sure.
People were really desperate for money. You know, like a lot of officers were looking to pick up extra shifts, and that's when you'd see other people that weren't prisoners being taken out in handcuffs occasionally.
Okay, Clarissa, 1 minute left. Want to tell everyone how they can find you, and you're about your cool website, the criminal code as well. So why don't you go ahead and tell everyone where they can get more serial killer fun, if I can talk for a second, after the show.
They can come to www.thecriminalcode.com, and there are links to my Facebook and Twitter. And if you want me to do a specific profile next, just send me an email, and I will try to get to it.
Awesome. Good stuff, Clarissa, as always. We got you out here. We come back after your Fox News, man. We got some big stuff going on. Don't go anywhere. Be right back right after this.
Fox News Radio, I'm Kathleen Maloney.
This is life-threatening.
Florida Governor Rick Scott says Hurricane Hermine is expected to crash into the Panhandle with strong wind, heavy rain, and a growing storm surge.
Even now, the conditions are deteriorating and deteriorating quickly. This county is under an emergency evacuation order, mandatory. 4 other counties as well with the same. People here have pretty much left. The real concern here is not just the wind, which we could get the worst of from this hurricane force, but the surge as well. Earlier predictions were a 3 to 6 foot storm surge. Now they're saying 11 feet. 11-foot surge would mean the water level would be over my head now. That means all the buildings I'm looking at least the first floor, would be underwater.
Fox's Steve Harrigan in Cedar Key. After Florida, Hermine has her eye on the Carolinas and beyond.
Tropical storm warnings extending all the way up just to the north of the Outer Banks. And as of the last advisory, tropical storm watch is now extending all the way up towards Sandy Hook, New Jersey, the entire Jersey coastline. So we have a lot of area that is going to be dealing with Hermine over the next number of days.
Fox meteorologist Rick Reichmuth. Hawaii is bracing for Hurricane Lester, forecast to swirl around the islands this weekend. The Category 2 storm is not expected to make landfall. A first in the continental U.S. concerning mosquitoes that spread the Zika virus.
Unfortunately, we got news today that 3 traps had come back with positive for Zika infected mosquitoes.
Miami-Dade Mayor Carlos Jimenez says the mosquitoes were trapped in Miami Beach. The number of non-travel related Zika infections has grown to 47 in Miami-Dade County. You're listening to Fox News Radio. Fair and balanced. After Donald Trump's immigration speech, at least 6 members of his Hispanic Advisory Council have either resigned or are thinking about it.
One thing that they are very upset about, and these are people, some of them who wrote the talking points for his meeting with Mexico's president yesterday, was this idea subtly stated, not quite as overtly as Mitt Romney said it back in 2012, of self-deportation. This is the part of the speech that some of them are very upset about.
For those here illegally today who are seeking legal status, they will have one route and one route only: to return home and apply for re-entry like everybody else.
They believe that that was neither realistic nor compassionate, which is what Donald Trump had promised them in this speech.
Fox's John Roberts. The Obama administration makes another pitch for Hillary.
Vice President Joe Biden stumping for Hillary Clinton with free trade-wary unionized auto workers in the crucial swing state of Ohio, where polls show Clinton and Donald Trump in a virtual tie.
You know, I know some of you are mad at Hillary. I know some of you look at her and say, let me tell you something, man. She gets it. And she never yields. She does not break. She stands up. You know what I like about them both the most? they know how to spell the word union. U-N-I-O-N.
A new Fox News poll shows 66% of those surveyed say Clinton is not honest or trustworthy. In Parma, Ohio, Jennifer Griffin, Fox News.
The State Department has agreed now to turn over all the detailed planning schedules from Hillary Clinton's time as Secretary of State to the Associated Press by mid-October. The minute-by-minute schedules offer a detailed look at Clinton's daily routine. I'm Kathleen Maloney, Fox News Radio.
Welcome back to After Hours AM, everybody. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis, right along with me,
Eric Olsen.
Eric, man, we have a couple blockbuster guests, and I know that our audience is also excited. So why don't you go ahead and fill everyone in on the awesome guests we got tonight.
All right. Well, we're talking about a brand new show from the producers of Paranormal Survivor, and it's called Haunted Case Files. It debuted last Sunday at 10 Eastern, 9 Central, and it will be at that same time for many weeks to come. And we have the stars or co-stars of 5 of those episodes. What's interesting about the show is they take 3 different stories and 3 different paranormal teams, approximately 20 minutes each, and profile their most terrifying cases each.
Oh.
So extreme supernatural experiences, from the unnerving through the terrifying to the downright dangerous. Be careful of what you look for, because even the most hardened veterans aren't always prepared for what they might find. These are cases that truly tested them. Each episode, as I said, features a story from 3 different paranormal investigation groups, along with interviews, recreations, and actual recordings of the evidence they captured. And with us tonight are a pair who are the stars of 5 of the episodes. And we have Joe, is it Cetrone? I don't want to say it wrong.
No, you got it. You got it first shot. It is Joe Cetrone.
Excellent. I'm patting myself on the back. Ooh, I'm hurting my arm.
Even a blind squirrel. Don't worry, Eric. Even a blind squirrel.
I am hurting my arm. It's an amazing thing. And joining us unexpectedly somewhat, I wasn't warned sufficiently, and I apologize for that, is Steve. And Steve, what is your last name, my friend?
It's pronounced Pate.
Steve
Pate. P-A-T-E. Yes, that's it.
Now, do you guys have a team name as a part of this show, or are you part of a team, or are you just working together as a pair?
Well, basically, what I did when I branched off on my own in early 2000s, I put together a team for a case that we did in Kansas, which was the Sally House case. I put together a project called the Dark Hauntings Project, and I guess it just stuck throughout the years, and you know, doing various cases. I've always gone under that umbrella of Dark Hauntings. So Dark Hauntings Research is the actual name of the team.
All right,
Cool.
Fantastic. And I didn't say it. How rude of me. Welcome to the show, Joe and Steve.
Thank you very much, guys. I appreciated the intro there. But I just want to add that it's on 10 p.m. Sunday night on Destination America.
Did I not say that?
I don't
maybe
think
you did, but I didn't hear it.
Hey, you know what? We can't
They're
say
my
enough
buds.
times.
They're my buds, my all-time buds at Destination America. We love them. We love them. We love them. We love them to pieces. Oh my God, they're in pieces on the floor.
Well, you know, we were talking off air, of course. Eric and I had a chance to see the first episode, of course, the screener, and wow, you know, it really it grabbed me because it was so unlike anything else I've seen in a very long time.
Totally different.
And I like that, you know, because, you know, we see a lot of shows that's the old, you know, IR camera, and you watch them do their little investigation, and, you know, is there anyone here that wants to talk to us? That whole thing. This one actually was, it mixed paranormal investigation with storytelling, but it did it so seamlessly and so well that it mixed better than I ever anticipated it to mix. And I got to tell you, I found myself wanting more when the screener was done. I was hoping they included one more. I'm thinking, come on, guys, one more. Just give me one more. But when you guys started the show, Joe and Steve, when you guys started the show, when you guys started filming, were you guys skeptical about how something that kind of mixture would work, or were you guys confident the whole time it would be just as awesome?
I guess for me, how it all started is after I did Paranormal Survivor. You know, I did episode 3, I think it was Ghost Children, and then they asked me to come back as kind of like a consultant for about 5 or 6 episodes. Mm-hmm. When they asked, you know, and told me about a new show that they were doing, it was actually under a different name. It was Paranormal Investigator. And I said, oh, you know what, let's give it a shot. So I went out there in Syracuse, probably November of last year, and we started doing the filming. And what was the strange thing for me is like, okay, where are we filming? And they brought us to this warehouse. And we take the elevator, I go upstairs into the warehouse, and it's a cold warehouse. I mean, it's dark. There's a couple little lights going on, and you can see people setting up and the cameramen setting up, and I'm like, then they have heaters going on because it was cold. I mean, it was November.
Sure.
And I'm like, how is this going to fit? Like, do they know what they're doing? Why are we thrown into this warehouse? After we started doing the filming, toward the end of one of the episodes, because my son is actually going to be in an episode as well, telling his story about something that happened to him while I was in the midst of doing a lot of cases, especially with the Kansas case. But when I looked into the camera and they showed me, look, check this video out and do all this, I'm looking through and I'm looking at this gritty screen, and I see this little light, and it's a dim light, and I'm like, when I saw it through the camera, I'm like, I understand what they're trying to capture. Mm-hmm. They're trying to capture this cold, dark, gritty atmosphere, and I'm like, that's something different that most shows don't seem to have. Sure. It was like they're trying to, capture that essence of scariness, and then after that, and I seen where they were going and the direction where they're doing with the other episodes, I'm like, this is exactly what they need to do, because somebody needs to come out with a show that talks about what the investigators themselves go through, not so much of hearing it on as far as the clients themselves, but what we go through and some of the dangers that we face. So doing it that way and the way that captured that whole aspect, it was always something special. So, yeah, I agree with you guys. There's something about the show, the atmosphere, and what they try to capture that made it so effective.
Yeah, definitely. I kind of, one thing came to my head is, there's a lot of scary stories, the investigators tell each other, around the old campfire. But how did you guys choose the stories to be in the show? I mean, because there's so many of them. What was that vetting process like? Was it hard, or was it really, really easy?
Wow, I'll tell you what it was. When I had talked to Brooke in the very beginning, she said, Joe, we're going to be doing a new show. We got some ideas. We're gonna actually take it from the perspective of the investigators themselves. Mm-hmm. Can you send me, a bunch of cases that you've done, ones that really stick out to you, and we can go from there. I ended up sending them 7 cases that I thought would be good. Not too much, not too over the top, not too little either. I said, let me go something that's going to be intriguing. I sent 7, and the crazy thing was they put together 5 and picked 5 of those 7 episodes. And
wow.
that was, cases, which was just mind-blowing to me, because I'm like, wow, basically, you took them all, and I believe they probably would have took the other two if it called for us to have even more episodes, because it just happened to work out that way. So I'm like, I trust you guys from Paranormal Survivor. You did a great job there. I know that you're going to tell the story the best you can, and it'd be good to have a shout-out to the investigators who have to go into houses, and a lot of times it becomes daunting because not every house is haunted, and you're not going to get evidence in most of the places that you go to. So, to finally have some of the work that you do throughout, the years of research, being able to tell that story, it's gratifying, because it's like, okay, you know what? You don't want fame, you don't want money. It's not all about that, but it's about somebody hearing the story from your perspective and telling it right. And not a lot of shows do that.
I was just about to say
this
that.
show got it right.
I was going to say, you don't see often the investigator's point of view. You hear from the victim a lot of what they endured, but you don't often, 9 times out of 10, you hear from them and not the actual investigator with the boots on the ground that says, wow, that was a freaky dang case. And this is what happened. And this is why it changed me, who I am in a lot of ways, working this case. Now, I know, Joe, you went through, your case, quite honestly, scared the hell out of me. Okay? I'm not even going to joke. That was scary. Mr. Cetrone. Yes. Yes,
the Sally House.
I wasn't with Joe on that one.
We actually talked to the owner of the Sally House, and they were actually trying to sell the Sally House right here on the show. Well, was it about 2 months ago, Eric?
Yeah.
And they were trying to
sell.
They were literally trying to sell on Zillow.
We actually had an episode that was billed as Paranormal Real Estate.
Yeah, and they were on the show.
We talked about some of the variables and some of the pluses and the minuses, and how much things have changed, where for some people now, paranormal activity could be a positive, could be a feature, not a bug, as it were. And so, we brought him on just kind of as an example of a place that is for sale. And oh my God, they're charging a huge premium.
$780,000 to own the Sally House.
How much?
$780,000.
And the house.
So maybe we can get the network to buy it.
Yeah, maybe. I just thought, personally, I would not want to own a haunted house because I enjoy a little thing called sleep.
Right,
I like
sleep outside. Well, you guys know that the original house that they filmed Halloween in.
Mm-hmm.
Fans bought that house and they live in it now.
Really?
And they kept everything the same. All the carpeting, the paneling, the paint, all the furniture, the paintings going up the stairs.
Man.
In the original Halloween movie, yep.
Now that is a dedicated fan right there.
Right.
That will buy that house, and they're going to keep it the same as the movie. That
I don't know if I want to live in that kind of environment and be reminded of what happened in the movie all of the time.
24/7. By the way.
Though, I will say this, I know you talked about the Sally House, and I have to tell you that it is probably my worst case. And when I say worst case, it's probably the most fearful of the cases was the Sally House, only because I remember going probably about a month before we actually went to the Sally House.
Mm-hmm.
I was hosting a radio show where we interviewed Tony and Deb Pickman.
Sure.
And they were really cool, and talking to those guys. And I remember seeing the episodes that they had. There was one on sightings they did many years ago, and, they had sporadic interviews. And one of the things that intrigued me so much about the Sally House is it looked like a regular house. It did not look like it was haunted. And you always question, in anything you do, you always question, can this house really be what they're saying it is? So I put together a team, at that point is when I said, let's do the Dark Hauntings Project. Let's go and spend 72 hours in the house. Let's go to that house and spend 72 hours, and let's see if there's any truth to what is happening in the house. So we go into Kansas, we're there, and I we stayed at a hotel, which was the Glick Mansion that was right across the street from the Sally House. So I actually ended up sleeping there, but most of our time in 15 hours at least a day for those 3 days was spent in that house anyway, in the Sally House. So I go there, the owner lets us in, and I remember going in there, and it's not a big house. You walk in, you've got your kitchen, a little living room, and you got the stairs going into the bedrooms, and then you have a basement. So I'm like, there's nothing like this house feels really warm and peaceful.
Sure.
And that Friday night that we were there, and even Saturday in the daytime, it always felt peaceful to me. It's like, why? Why is this so warm? Why is it so inviting? And I almost felt like I want to be in here. This is great. I mean, if we're going to do an investigation, this doesn't seem so bad. I think we're going to be okay.
Yeah. It
seems
seems great.
In the midst of all that, Tony Pickman actually got attacked. While we were there, he felt something on his back. He says, "I feel something cold on my back." He lifted his shirt up, and there was this huge scratch mark, fresh blood. And I had
Joe?
Say that again, Steve.
Sorry, Joe. Did you send those pictures in so they could see them?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Matter of fact, when the show does that on Haunted Case Files, it's going to show some of the pictures. So he lifted up. I have a police officer there, a Kansas police officer and a paramedic, who made sure, first of all, it was real blood, and Tony was all right. So once again, though, he may have gotten attacked, and that was shocking enough, but still, inside the house is very, very warm. I even questioned there must be multiple spirits in here because he got attacked, but I still feel that comfort, that warmthness.
Sure.
So going into the second day, third day, he was attacked on 3 different occasions. We got a lot of evidence, orbs with human faces in it. I mean, all those things, we were able to capture. So on an evidential side, it was all great. But here's what was my conclusion, and this is what I want to say about why I say it's the most scariest case for me, is because toward the end, and when I left and I'm going on the plane, it kind of hit me like a light bulb. I remember somebody who first investigated the house. I believe his name was Todd Bates, and he had a radio show called Haunted Voices Radio, or something like that.
Yeah.
He actually was one of the investigators who went in there originally. Here was the craziest thing. I believe there was one spirit in that house, one dominating spirit, and that spirit could conform to anything it wanted to be to make whoever they're trying to get in there or do anything to or deceive. To every different person, it can be a different characteristic trait.
Gotcha.
And because I was nervous about it, that warmthness and doing all those things to get me to ease into it and not think that was anything serious was really just a ploy because it was those things. It just made sure it hid more in secret while I was trying to debunk it or try to prove that there was something dark in it. It went the other way. When we finally arrived back into Rhode Island, everybody who was in that part of that case, the investigators, had something happen. My son got attacked by something unknown, scratched his head and tossed him across the room.
Oh, geez.
The other investigator that I was with ended up going through a divorce and a home foreclosure. The other investigator, which had a problem and ended up in rehab.
Wow.
So everybody got hit psychologically after that. And when I talked to the Pickmans and other people that were, they says there's 2 different ways that the spirit gets you in this house. It can get you by physically harming you, which we know it did it to Tony. We know he got attacked. We know there are other investigators who've gotten attacked. Or it gets you psychologically after. So the fallout isn't so. It usually happens more of a fallout after the aftermath.
Yeah.
Not so much while you're in the house. And that's when I knew there was something dangerous, because if there's an entity with enough intelligence, an energy with enough intelligence to know what it's doing and how it hits somebody different in all the aspects, and all the different investigators could have a different story to tell, I believe it can be anything it wants you to believe it is. And that's what makes that house dangerous.
Well, I got a question for you. I've heard, and I also confirmed, you can spend a night at the Sally House for $189 a night to investigate it. How does that make you feel, knowing how dangerous this is? You're basically someone renting somebody something that could potentially harm them in a meaningful way. How do you feel? Do you agree with that?
No, that's a great question.
Right.
Here's what happened to paranormal. This is what happened to the whole paranormal community, I think, in my opinion, because it's just my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
In the beginning, you had all these shows that were coming out. You had the Ghost Hunters, and I know Jason and Grant, and I know those guys, and you had, different various shows were coming out, and people found it really, really intriguing. Wow, this is a different take on it. Somebody going into a house, trying to assess to see if it's haunted, if it's not, debunking it. I got the whole concept. I knew where everybody was trying to go. EVPs were becoming even bigger. People capturing orbs as our cameras were changing, and the megapixels and all that stuff were happening. It was more like a ooh-ah thing. Wow, this is great. This is reality TV at its best. Then something happened. It wasn't Casper, the friendly ghost, like people thought they were. We weren't ghost chasers on a quest for Casper. Here's what was happening. People started to find a way to seek profit and gain off the dead. Once that happened, once all that started coming out, and you get these shows that, and some of them are really good shows. I'm not saying they're not, but a lot of them it's entertainment. You want to find something, you want to believe there's something, and you keep looking. Then other kids, little kids, younger kids, were going with cameras, going into warehouses, going into graveyards. Everything got so crazy and so out of hand that once money became in the picture, then telling the story or actually helping a person, then I knew we were on dangerous grounds. So here we are believing that we're investigating the dead, that we're investigating the supernatural. And here's what I think. I think it's shifted, and we're the ones that are being investigated, and we're the ones that are being made more of a mockery, because I think we've punched so many holes into the veil that it's just crazy. That why would somebody want to spend, and this is just my opinion, spend a couple of $100 to go into a place knowing that there's a possibility of something happening, or something even happening after when you leave there. If we've come to a point that we have to do that, that's when I kind of draw the line and say, you know what? It's okay to want to believe in ghosts, because once you know that they're real, once you have that evidence, once you've gone through that shocking wow factor, then you have to realize, okay, now that I know they do exist, how do I live the rest of my life knowing that one day I'm going to die, and when I die, who am I going to face, and where am I going to the point of, are we going to have a lot of angry spirits on the other end of things? I don't think anybody thinks of that, because when you see a TV show, it's a show. It has commercials. It has those moments where you're scared, and it has those moments where it knows to ease up, because it's just, it's a show. It's going to end.
Yeah.
But when I start to think about the reality of when somebody like my son gets attacked for something that I might have done, or the way I did something, or maybe just was at the wrong place at the wrong time, when I start to compare those notes, I think that the dangers to me have become more real, that in the past decade, we're going to see the shift where the spiritual side, the spirit realm, the supernatural realm, might start retaliating. That's how I truly feel.
No,
sounds like the Evil Dead.
I was just about to say, I mean, do you think that ignorance in some cases is truly bliss? Not knowing the evil and hardcore side of the paranormal, for the average Joe to not go looking for those snakes unless you are totally prepared to pay that price.
you've got to be totally prepared to pay that price. There's 3 steps to the whole thing. First of all, you go into it for want to believe that there's something. We all do. We all did. Then you try hard to get that evidence. When you get that evidence, it's great. It's like, holy cow, this is unbelievable. I've got tangible proof and evidence of something, a voice or a picture that is not in this reality. I picked this up. This is the EVP I've got. This is a voice that's unknown. I've sent it to experts. This is something else, not here from this world. Once you can get those 2 things, you could either do one of 2 things. You could say, okay, I know it's real. I understand that. Now I might live my life differently knowing that this exists. Or you're going to dive into a little bit more and go a little deeper. Once you decide to go deeper and you voluntarily go deeper, already knowing that it's real and there are dangers, just like going into the ocean, you know sharks are in there, you know there are big predators in there, you're not going to go deep into it because you have a fear of it. But if you do decide to go on that territory, then you're opening yourself up to the possibility of something happening. And I think that's what's going on into the supernatural. You've got to know that when you go into it and you've pushed that envelope, that you have opened yourself up to anything, and you must be okay with it because you've agreed to do it. So it depends on how far you want to take that research, what you do with that research, and are you trying to profit off of that research, or are you trying to help somebody else in the future by obtaining the evidence that you have, knowing that it could make the difference to either a client in another home or a case or another investigator? Are you using those resources for the good, or are you using it for the greed aspect of it all? And that's just my opinion on it.
Yeah. We got to run a break till we come back. Really, really deep. More Haunted Case Files. Don't go anywhere right after this. Anavar Media LCC is a dedicated team of professionals committed to helping business development scale and protect their websites, mobile applications, enterprise software solutions in the Northeast Ohio area. Locally owned since 2012, our client-centered values truly sets Anavar apart. Contact us today to learn how you can get 25% off your first project. Call them at 234-380-4852. Again, that's 234-380-4852, or visit them at www.anavar.com. Again, that's www.anavar.com.
Hi, Tom Bodette. If you can hear me, then you have an internet connection, which means you can do cool things online, like listen to streaming radio, obviously, or watch a video of a monkey washing a cat. Let your freak flag fly. Or you can book a room at a great price at Motel6.com. Isn't the internet wonderful? Everything you want right at your fingertips, and whoa, did not need to see that. I'm Tom Bodette for Motel 6, and we'll leave the light on for you.
You've seen all kinds of movies, but you've never seen anything like the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
They're probably foreigners with ways different than our own.
I'm just a sweet transvestite.
See the Rocky Horror Picture Show. A different set of Jaws. Rated R.
Author Steve Asher brings us Hauntings of Trilogy. Steve's first book, Hauntings of the Kentucky State Penitentiary. This first installment of the trilogy tells us the tale of the Kentucky State Penitentiary and why it's so haunted. With every turn of the page, there will be something new and terrifying. Pick up Steve's new book, Hauntings of the Kentucky State Penitentiary, at Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, and all better bookstores everywhere. Do
Do you have a question for our guest tonight? Don't feel like calling the show? Not a problem. Email those questions to afterhoursam@gmail.com. Again, that's afterhoursam@gmail.com.
You're dead! I saw you die!
I was faking. I used ninja focus to slow my heart rate down.
What are you doing?
I'm burying you.
I'm alive! I'm alive!
You're waking the neighbors!
No.
Shut up!
No!
Now I'm gonna play your drumstick.
And welcome back to After Hours AM, everybody. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis, right along with me,
Eric Olsen.
Eric, man, good stuff.
Very good. Very
really blew my mind. I like a good philosophical talk because we don't get enough of the cautionary stuff either. We get all the, hey, it's great, let's go out there with our cameras and get EVP and do this and do that. There are real dangers out there. There really are snakes out there that will get up and bite you once in a while.
It's a very interesting sign of relative maturity in this market. They talk about mature markets. And so, the shows have been going on for long enough now, and people have been responding to them and who have popped up and gone out and started investigating for themselves, largely as a result of seeing the shows and how things are presented there. And now we're seeing it's starting to come full circle. People were terrified of this for the most part 20, 30, 50, 100 years ago, right? And we've seen kind of a lessening of that, a normalization of it as we're seeing it on TV. But now we're coming back around the other way, and we're having investigators, including we had a sociologist who was looking very deeply into how paranormal experiences affect the people who experience them. That was his angle. Kind of an ethnographic, sociological look. And even he, who was observing things kind of as a third party, he himself was impacted. And he had to stop it for a while. And he was saying, wow, I was losing my sense of who I am and what is real. And this is a guy just observing as a third party. So, yes, the people who are really in the trenches, like you guys, and who are out there all the time and who really take this stuff seriously, it's very interesting to hear how many now of you really top-notch investigators are coming back recently, over the last year or two. I'm hearing a lot more people put that cautionary note in there and say there are consequences. And I also like the part, because it brings us kind of back to the issue of intent, which we hear a lot about when we talk about witchcraft and whatnot. What is intent? But I'm interested to hear that you guys think that intent plays a role too. So if your intent is not honorable, if your intent is just to, as you put it, profit off the dead, that can also have an impact. Do you think that impact is psychological, or do the spirits actually pick up on that and become upset about it?
Well, that's a deep question that probably has a lot of different angles that you can go with it. But in short, how I would sum that up is, well, first of all, we could always tell. If we were talking more on a scientific level, you can meet somebody and they could rub you the wrong way, or you can find that you're drawn to that person because everybody has a certain energy inside, because we are energy. I mean, we are energy with intelligence. So we can detect what feels good, or being around somebody who's got positive energy. I mean, we can pretty well detect that. It's just the way we operate as human beings. It's very easy to detect. I think in the supernatural realm, it might be heightened more because there is probably, well, I really assume, there is no fleshly physical body in that supernatural realm. So whatever it is, I remember John Zaffis telling me that spirits are really, we are just energies with intelligence. And then there are beings on the other side who are energies with a greater intelligence who are non-human. So I think they can detect who we are and how we are by those energies. That's on a scientific aspect. But in reality, in layman's terms, if a spirit is occupying a space in our house, in our room, or wherever we are, we can't see them, but they're there. They're listening to many conversations. And in fact, when you really think about it, if you put an enemy in the camp to sneak, to listen, it's gonna gather as much information that it possibly can. And I think that's where we are. I think when I had a friend that said we've punched so many holes into the veil that
I love that phrase.
I do too.
Great phrase.
It's true. It really is, and it just spills into our reality that they can come and go as they please here. I mean, look, shadow people, the sightings of shadow people are being seen so much now that in broad daylight, there's reports of shadow beings on the streets, in houses, walking, where that was something you'd see more at nighttime. Now they're coming out in broad daylight. So it doesn't really matter of what's going on because the dam is already broke. Everything is coming through.
Exactly.
And I think it gives them the upper hand because we can't really hide these conversations. We can't hide these motives because, unfortunately, we're in a society that is driven by profit, gain, money. Some of it's greed. Some people have good motives. Some people have bad motives. And I think in the spirit realm, it's the same thing. I think they can detect what motives are good, what motives are bad. But either whether it's good or bad doesn't still make it good because Dave Considine, which is a demonologist who studied under Ed Warren, who's a friend of mine, he always said, Joe, when we do investigating and we use all this type of equipment and EVPs and tape recorders, it's all great. We're doing it in the name of, research and to help people, and I do agree with that. But no matter what, it's still a form of digital necromancing. It's still contacting something that's not in this world. And that is when you open yourself up to whatever goes or whoever you let in. So it's not necessarily saying it's human spirits. We can say it's inhuman spirits, but whatever it is, whatever is happening right now in 2016 dealing with the paranormal is definitely something that we should, as investigators, be more aware and be more alert because it's just getting way, way out of hand right now. When we start to worry about what's on the other side more than what's going on in the world today, that's when we have to reevaluate what our true motives are.
Well, sure. I mean, you see so many people are so preoccupied with the paranormal or the afterlife that they're not even taking time to enjoy this life.
Absolutely.
And what it has to offer. And, and do you think that the explosion of hauntings and paranormal activity, do you think a lot of it can be attributed to collective consciousness? All of us, most of these people putting their will into this and it's bleeding out more and more through these holes that have been punched in the veil?
That's a great question, and I'll actually hand some of it over to Steve to get him on this too, and get his take about what's going on. But I think at this point where we have come to a point that we would have to, like you just said, we just talk about people want hope. They want to know that there's something on the other side. We all want to believe that there's a heaven or a place that we can go to rest, to be at peace when we transition and leave this world. Everybody wants to. We know the stories. We know whatever someone's beliefs are, religious beliefs, anything like that. It all leads to finding your peace when you depart from this world. And because we're in a world right now that's full of vengeance and death and murder and disease and famine and all the stuff that's happening. I mean, it doesn't take rocket science to realize what's happening within the world and everything that's we're set on what is going to happen when we leave here. We forget that what we do here is what happens to us on the other side. Now, I'm not saying that we're going to go to hell, and all these things are going to happen, and all this crazy stuff that people talk about. Not to say that there's not those places, and those aren't the belief systems. I'm just saying that what happens to us on the other side is all predicated on how we live our life here.
Exactly.
So I do believe that there are observers out there that can see and detect and know what each individual's motives are, what we're doing, what our desires are, and where we expect to go in the future, in life here, and even into the afterlife. And that's where I think we have that confliction, because we should be worrying about what we're doing here. We should be worrying about survival and life and work and all these things that we want to do, because these are part of the lessons that I think we need to learn more than we have to worry about what's happening on the other side. We're not there yet, but yet we're bringing it here.
Exactly. Very, very well said. Very well said. And Steve, I would imagine you echo that same thing, and you've had your own experiences as well.
Talk to us, Steve.
Absolutely. Oh, I'm here. I'm listening. I mean, Joe's said it. Hit the nail on the head. But it's for me. It starts with personal experience. I have a few experiences that really it gets you your mind going. What is on the other side? And I don't want to get into full details of personal experiences, but I'll tell you one real quick. My mother's brother, he's a Sacred Heart brother. Do you know what that is, you guys? It's kind of like a Catholic priest, but a little bit different. Anyways, we were sitting with another priest in Providence, sitting in the rectory with him. It was just a good friend of his, and I was always into this kind of stuff, even as a kid. And he told me a story. Now, this is coming from an 86-year-old priest, okay? He said that he had some parishioners that came up to him one day after church and said, I think there's something wrong with our daughter. Could you have a talk with her? So they brought her in. She was only 10, and she actually, I'm cutting a long story short, she actually started swearing. Now, any kid can swear, but it was a totally different voice, and it was actually the chair I was sitting in when he was telling me the story. The good little girl, 10-year-old girl, picked the priest up and threw him 10 feet across the room into the wall.
Whoa.
Wow.
So, and this is coming from my uncle, who is a very Christian guy and an 86-year-old priest. So I believe the story.
Oh yeah, I would as well.
So I think that's where it started for me back then. And you see a lot of movies, and then I met Joe. But I've had a couple experiences that happened to me myself that people say it gets their attention when I tell them. I don't want to start getting into that. Maybe that's for another episode. But to reiterate on what Joe was saying, most of the cases that we go on, that Joe goes on, Joe's there to help people. And sometimes when you go to a case, it's you 90%, Joe, and correct me if I'm wrong, probably more than 90%. It's a rational explanation. It's a creak in a board, or there's a water drip, or some wind that comes through a window that they don't realize open that might move something. And sometimes when you go into a case and do an investigation and you tell them there's nothing here, it's just this or that, and you point it out, they seem disappointed. And they don't know what they're messing with. Now, you have the good spirits and the inhuman spirits. The inhuman spirits you don't want to mess with.
Yeah.
And Joe will attest to that. You guys already know that anyway. Yeah. But I think that's where people are crossing the line. They don't take it serious enough, and that's where it goes back to what's going to happen to us in the afterlife. What's going to be there? And like Joe said, if you're messing with them now, we don't know what's going to happen after. I want to stay on the good path.
Well, sure,
all the way through.
They might remember your name. And when you go over there, they'll be waiting for you, and they're like, "There's
you never know.
There's
you never know."
Hey, listen, I will tell you this, and I have gotten EVPs where they do call your name, and they do identify you. And I remember the very first
Yeah, we
time.
did that with Lisa, Joe.
Right. I remember the very first time, too, that I had my name called. And the guy that I was training with, I said, you know what? I think he just called my name. And I was blown away by that. Or, the spirit called my name. And he was like, yeah, that's just their way of identifying that they know who you are. And then it hit me the next day when I was thinking about it, they know who I am. As we address some of the spirits in the house when we do cleansings, and we have to address a certain spirit or ask that spirit to address its name so we can tell it to move and leave.
Yep.
They do the same thing. They address and they know who you are.
Mm-hmm.
There was a great famous line in the movie The Mothman Prophecies when Richard Gere was going to the guy that wrote the book about what happened to him, and he said, don't quote me word for word, but he says that you notice them, and they notice that you notice them.
Mm-hmm.
And that made the biggest sense to me because once you could lock in to know that they exist, and they know you know that they exist, that changes the whole dynamics of your life forever. So if you experience something like I did when I was between the ages of 6 and 7 years old, when I had a spirit actually appear to me in front of my bed that frightened me so much that the only thing that got it to leave is when I prayed, and I didn't really know what prayer was at that point. Yeah. I just knew what I heard in church, and I just tried to recite it to the best way I could, and then the spirit left. Mm-hmm. I logged all this stuff down throughout the years, and I kept a journal in my life, all the supernatural happenings, me getting involved with the paranormal, what led me to everything that I did, kind of like a journey through my whole life, and I wrote a book about it, which came out 2 years ago. And that pretty well just covers my whole life of what I did wrong, what I did right, and what led me to believe there, to come to the conclusions of what I believe. And I kind of just went down and up the road of different religions and different philosophies and different beliefs, but it always went back to the same thing. It goes back to the roots of what happened to you first. When you had that first paranormal experience, you know it was supernatural, you never forget it like as if it was yesterday, and it could be 30 years ago. It doesn't really matter. Once that sticks with you, you're scarred for life with it. So it's just a matter of, are you going to heed to a possible calling that you have to help people, or are you going to just shelve it and say, okay, I know this happened to me, I'm not going to tell anybody, and then you're going to move on with your life, and you live your life. Mm-hmm. But people like myself, you can't, because you chased it your whole life, no matter what you do, no matter your relationships, your life, your kids, your career, your profession. I mean, I'm a drummer in a band. Actually, Steve is the guitar player. So we try to find rationality doing other things. I've been playing drums for 25 years right now, and that's my out. Music is my out. But you have to get away from it, because eventually it will consume you. The paranormal world, the electromagnetic frequencies, what you're always surrounding yourself with, will eventually take a toll on you mentally and physically if you don't find other outlets. And that's the whole thing of the show on Destination America, Haunted Case Files, because it finally tells the stories of what, from the paranormal investigator's perspective, not from somebody who was a client who's telling their story and they're taking through all the things that happen in their life, and then you have the investigator come in and help them, and you see what those people have gone through as far as being terrified and the things that happen to them, but nobody really got to tell the side of what happens to the investigators when they go home, or when a loved one or their child, like my son, got attacked, for possibly getting attacked for what I was involved in doing, and he was just innocent little boy when that happened. So you have to stop and think of what is the common sense and what is the right way to do things, and that's what it is. You do have to have a respect in the paranormal, you do have to expect that it's not going to be haunted houses every time you go to a case. Sometimes they're just people that want to tell you their story. They just want to talk. They want to have somebody to talk to. There's so many different aspects that you as an investigator, sometimes you go to a case, nothing happens, and you become a counselor for a couple of hours because somebody just needed to talk to somebody. You don't go to police. You don't do all that stuff. So here we are. So we kind of get everybody's emotions dumped on us along with the frequencies of what's happening, the spirit frequencies of what's going on the other side. So you're getting bombarded with double the amount of emotions. And if you have no way to go to release that and you're just consuming yourself with that paranormal, it's going to drive you crazy.
Well, exactly.
And you know what else?
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I've noticed something I see all the time. It's almost like paranormal addiction. That they're so deep into the paranormal, some of these folks that get into it, and it's almost like an addiction. And like you guys are saying, you need other dimensions of yourself, other sides of yourself, because it will consume you, given that opportunity.
Well,
hey, guys, you should probably... Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say real quick, I'm sorry. When we do a case, when Joe and I go on a case, Joe always does a cleansing, and he always says a prayer before and after. There are not a lot of investigators that do that. So Joe does bring in the religious aspect just to have some good spirit in the house. You know, that's all I wanted to say. And I also wanted to say real quick that the case that me and Joe did, that's going to be on Haunted Case Files Sunday night, 10 p.m. on Destination America. Wait till you guys see this story. It is amazing. Joe and I were there. We witnessed it. It's incredible. You guys are going to freak out when you see this.
That's exactly what I was going to say when I interrupted you. I was going to say, oh, no, we're running out of time. Tell us a little more about the show, because, of course, we want to remind people to watch the show. Maybe if you could just do a super quick description, maybe, of some of a few of your segments.
Yeah, I can say a little bit. It's one, I know just real quick, Joe. The one in Rhode Island, a couple calls in to Joe after their flirtation with the occult, which means, I don't want to say too much, I'll tease it. Yeah. They were messing with a Ouija board.
Oh, boy.
And a demonic, a demonic spirit came out in their house, and they couldn't control it, and they contacted Joe. I don't want to go too far. I'd love to tell you guys the whole story, because it's amazing, but you're going to see the whole thing, and the reenactments and everything on the show Sunday night on Haunted Case Files, 10 p.m. Eastern Time on Destination America. That's the one I just wanted to say, Joe.
Well done.
Very good, man, and it's great. It is. It's going to be a good show, and it kind of deals with a little bit about people trying to get involved with things, and once again, it's a whole lesson of you have to know that when you put yourself in that arena, you're opening up yourself to anything that's happening, whether you use it Ouija boards or tarot cards, any type of divination tool will allow things to happen. But for the listeners out there, if you want to know more about myself and what's happening with Dark Hauntings, Steve and myself, you can go to www.joecetrone.com, and there's also joecetrone.net. It all refers you back to the same site. It'll give you all stuff that's going on with Paranormal Survivor, the new show, Haunted Case Files, appearances, speakings, engagements, things like that. So anything you want to know, hit the contact form, email me, let me know what you think. There's links to the book, and it's really been a good time, and I thank you guys for having us on. It's always a pleasure to kind of share some light of what's happening and answer any questions that we possibly can.
Very cool. Very, very cool. I just can't tell people tune in. You're going to love the show. If you want something fresh and cool, a new take on your paranormal viewing experience, tune in to Haunted Case Files. I had the same reaction. Oh my God, this is totally new, totally awesome. Thank God something refreshing out there that shows a different angle. And more importantly, the investigator's angle. You know what I mean? That really shows the boots in the ground. This is what it's like to do this work. This is what it's like to have this happen. And a lot of people go into the paranormal being very, very green and only having the Hollywood view of things. That everything ends great in the end. Oh, yes, good overcomes evil every time. That's not always the case. You know, evil is. I think Bishop Long said it best. Bishop James Long said, you can taunt a demon. Sure, you could say, come at me, demon. Go right ahead. Do your worst. And it could wait 20 years. It could wait 30 years. And then it could get you. Because it has no concept of time. So what you're
time in the spirit realm.
What you're messing with now could totally destroy you later. And that's a scary prospect. That's and it should be taken with extreme caution.
We've had a cautionary show, that's for sure. Yeah, it's some really thoughtful stuff. I appreciate it. I really enjoyed this discussion. You guys are very sharp and very thoughtful. You're not just out there running around beating the bushes and flashing the lights and taking pictures and saying, is anybody here? You are thinking about it, and you're forming theories and forming a way of life, and you're letting people know about it. So we appreciate that. It's actually very refreshing.
Definitely, guys. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really enjoyed talking to both of you.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Joel. I appreciate having us on.
Hey, not a problem. Anytime, guys. Anytime. On behalf of myself, Joel Sturgis, and Mr. Eric Olsen, we'd like to thank you for listening to this edition of After Hours AM. Take care of each other, love each other. More importantly, tune in to... Okay, I won't end it there. Just love each other, take care of each other. All right, guys? Because life is far more important than you realize. Take care.
Thank you for listening to this edition of After Hours AM, and please remember to like us on Facebook and also follow us over on Twitter.